just behind me here is what's called Buġibba temple, built between the 4th and the 3rd millennium BC. It's one of the ancient temples, one of the Neolithic temples here on Malta. What's intriguing about this is the fact that a hotel has been built around it, and it was first really discovered and analysed in the 1920s. But you can see it's got the classic dolmen shape, but this would have been like a kidney shaped or goddess shaped temple, much like the others we find all over Malta and Gozo. The ruins of a Buġibba temple were first noticed in the 1920s by Temi Zamet. He was a local scholar renowned in the fields of archaeology and medicine. At that time, it was just a small mound with a few monoliths sticking out of the ground. And this was just a field. It was then excavated in 1928 under the supervision of L.J. Upton Way. So the surviving ruins of the temple look like they form part of a concave facade, which would have been on the outer part of the temple, which you can see in front of us, but also behind there were two apses, like the kidney shape or the goddess shape. Some of the things about this temple which are interesting, which we kind of saw in the museum, were the fish carvings that were found here, and also the spiral motifs that are also found here, which are very similar to Tarshan and other sites, and they really are quite beautiful. But this is the main lintel here, and it's obviously been partly reconstructed. So you can't really see too much detail here, but it's pretty damn big. And here's a massive block here, which is obviously fallen. This would have been part of probably the outer wall. It could have been a lintel top, like we have on the other part of the temple, just over here. So this is the big stone, bigger than the lintel on the uprights, the trilithon. We have another one right next to it. So it's a very megalithic temple. There's representations of the fish are being carved in relief here, as well as the spiral, suggesting this was connected with the other sites. And the other thing about this site is that it connects on a perfect ley line between here, through Camino, Gigantia on Gozo, and Sansuna Dolmen. And we know there are traditions going way back that suggest that the goddess Sansuna, who is represented with the sort of very full statues that have been found, she would carry a baby on her back. She would carry stones, potentially in her apron in some stories. She would drop them as she strided across the landscape, eating beans through her hand, picking up beans. And these special magical beans gave her special powers. And so we have representations of ley lines, and there's one here connecting with Gigantia and Sansuna Dolmen on Gozo. And these are the same traditions we find all over different parts of Britain and even different parts of Europe and the world, which suggests that there was a connection between these ancient sites. And there's now research being done about the serious connection with these sites. And if that is the case, then that could suggest some of these sites are over 9,000 years old. So we're getting to almost the Göbekli Tepe era, or maybe a little bit later. And so if the age of these do prove to be much older, basically that's going to rewrite history. And it's especially interesting because some of the early researchers and early dating of these sites officially were recorded as 8,000 BC, and then it got changed over to later era, 4,000, 3,000 BC, for political reasons. And this is really a real struggle when you're trying to deal with the reality of the dating here, because if they are much older, it's going to rewrite the history of this entire country, in fact of the entire world, and suggesting there were connections after Göbekli Tepe leading down towards Israel, then coming over to Malta via Sicily, especially with the great monolith that's been found under the sea there as well, which could be as old as these dates that are now emerging as 8,000 BC and beyond. I'm just going to give you a little reading actually from Lenny Rejic's book, Sirius, the Start of the Maltese Temples, when it actually talks about Buģibba. So I'll just give you a couple of paragraphs here, because this is astonishing. If you actually look at the reality of this, then this dates back almost to the time of Göbekli Tepe in southeast Turkey. And this is a unique place because it's got a hotel built around it. and not any other hotel in the world I know of has that, and it's a remarkably peaceful, beautiful spot. And officially it dates back to around 3000 or so BC, but let me read this to you, because new research has pushed the dates much further back. So this is from the chapter The Temples and the Sky. 200 years later, at around 8700 BC, a temple was built pointing to the setting of Sirius again. It can be found on the north coast of Malta in the middle of a built-up area in Buģibba. In its present state, only 2 ruined apsises are visible behind the restored monumental entrance, but originally it consisted of the usual 5. The tumbled blocks of the remains of the temple now grace the courtyard of a tourist hotel, the mundane wings of which surround it completely, robbing the once impressive building of its charm as well as its view. This must have been quite an amazing one, with an azimuth of 193.5 degrees, slightly west of south. The view from the Buģibba temple extends across the Bumarid plain, skirting Wadira Ridge and reaching all the way to the Dwerja lines in the far distance, to the point where Sirius set 10,700 years ago. So what she's basically saying is that the view from this temple where Sirius was rising would have been clear of kind of atmospheric blockages, really, and so it would have been a perfect orientation. It's even been admitted by archaeologists and archaeoastronomers that this is indeed the case. And so this is just one of many sites here on Malta with this kind of design, with this style spec, with this megalithic technology, utilizing the limestone here. And some of the temples were originally beautifully put together, almost like kind of bricks, like precision engineered temples. Now much weathering has taken place, so we don't get that so much anymore. So we'll just take a little walk through from the back this time, and you can see where the stones are now. I mean, all this area here probably would have been the temple all the way to the edge of the hotel, and it would have gone much further around. This huge block here is just immense, and you can see the neat and tidy shape of the uprights over here. Now these may have been slightly reconstructed, but there is proof that each of the stones, all the temples in Malta, were beautifully created, like absolutely precision carved. You can see examples all over the country of how well they did this, and so I'm just very impressed. You know, this is just one example, obviously, of all the sites here in Malta. They're much older than potentially realized, and one of the other things we're going to be looking at is the fact that they were controlling the telluric currents, the earth energies, which is something I've been looking at for years with various geomancers and dowsers. So here's just a view from the dolmen within the hotel of the beautiful sea, beautiful swimming pool, and the entire temple, as you can see from above, is surrounded by a swimming pool and an outdoor kind of patio complex, which is actually the shape of what the temple would have looked like. So they've really thought about this when they built this hotel originally. So there's a lot of detail has gone into it, and I really like that. And this is obviously the actual dolmen itself. We'll take another little walk through so you can get a sense of some of the stones here and the scale of it. Just walk through where one of the apses would have been, and you can see the weathering on some of these stones is quite amazing. Very badly weathered. And here's the main, what they call a dolmen, but really this was a major temple with 5 apses, like 5 kind of areas. And it's actually interesting, it's in the shape almost like, you know, most of these temples are in the shape of like a goddess. Now from above, when you look at it from above, and so this goddess cult suggests that these dates Lenny Ridgick has come up with make sense. They're actually much older than people have realized. Absolutely amazing. This is the way we walk into it from the hotel. Now officially it's, you know, 3rd millennium BC, and They think it was built, interestingly, that it was actually built at the same time as Gigantia, which is what it's aligned to, precisely with the Sansuna goddess kind of mythos, and this ley line that goes across, which interestingly lines up precisely with this temple here, Buġibba, with Gigantia on Gozo, with Sansuna Dolmen, the traditions of the giantess called Sansuna striding between these sites and dropping stones from an apron, like traditions we find all over ancient Britain and other parts of Europe. Yeah, so this is really one of the many temples here that are extremely important in, and really dating the whole megalithic world now. This could be not long after Göbekli Tepe, most of these sites on Malta now, which is astonishing. And this creates a whole other dimension of reality when we look into the Neolithic past.